I just want it to be noted, Zach. They had a chance. They could have shut us up. All it would have taken was one little sweep against the Royals, but nope. Couldn't get it done. 3 out of 4 is the final result. As we left us on the Patreon show saying, one sweep and we'll just shut up about all the negativity in the first half. They'll be above 500. Well, there'll be nothing for us to complain about. Well, we'll find a few things to complain about. What do you think?
You know what that sound means? That means you just made a movie reference that Zach understands. Hey!
Wow! That's incredible. What do I win? I feel like I even need to get this fired up.
Wolf of Wall Street.
I wonder why you saw that movie. Anyway, I'm so
Leo
happy we finally crossed
Leo
that
was
threshold.
fantastic in Titanic, and I had to see what he did next.
Yeah, that was the big selling factor of that movie. Yeah, the first half of the movie is actually like, when does she show? Oh, there we go. There's Margot Robbie for everybody. Thank you for showing up.
Anyway,
Guardians mostly showed up this weekend to end the first half, 3 out of 4. This comes back to something I said a couple of shows ago. Doesn't it always feel like even when they're at their best, there's still that next level? Oh, there's so much closer to having a terrific end to the first half by sweeping the Royals, but unfortunately the offense that they had discovered disappears in the finale, but they still head into the break at 500, holding on very carefully to the top spot in the American League Central. I don't know. How do you wrap this first half into a nice little bow? Nice little tidy bow for everybody listening.
they're 45 and 45. They're even. I mean, it was so fitting that you had Bieber on the mound, who's supposed to be your ace, facing a Royals team that has just been dreadful, and go walk into that Royals clubhouse and ask anybody in there how they're doing, because there's a lot of familiar faces, and they just seem so beaten and defeated. And wow, we're not very good. How are you? You had a chance to sweep that series. You had Bieber on the mound.
Very good. How are you?
You had Bieber on the mound against a guy who hadn't pitched in a long time because he got drilled with a comebacker. Like, this was set up for you to take the series sweep and ride into the All-Star break with all that momentum and the Twins reeling after a series against the Orioles. And you lost. So we don't need to dwell on the one game when they've played better over the last few weeks, but that just felt fitting, right? Like, they can't get out of their own way. And even when things are looking good and everything's set up, it's like when Clase comes in to get some work in a 4-run game, that's the day he gives up 4 runs. Like, things like that we've seen all season. So it figures that that's how they close out the first half.
We'll get to Bieber. We'll talk about the first half. I want to revisit some of our own stupidity, too, and laugh at ourselves. It's all part of the first half. I do want to welcome everyone to the Selby's Godcast before Zach yells at me for doing it 40 minutes into the show. I'm TJ, that's Zach. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you know that, you're probably already here listening, but I'm putting it out there for the new people. And for you newbies, come join us over at YouTube, too, where we put up the free episode up on YouTube. So subscribe, help us grow on that side of the podcast as well, and help us reach more Guardians fans. And, of course, if you're looking for more episodes of the show, one just isn't enough. Sometimes I question whether or not one is enough for just the two of us looking at each other. But if you want more, Patreon.com/SelbyIsGodcast. Come join the Discord. You get access to the Discord when you become a Patreon supporter. It's a good time. We appreciate all of you, and you get that for $1 per additional episode. We do that typically 1 per week. So thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging out with us through the first half. It's been a first half to, on some level, to remember, and some have to absolutely forget it. As you said, Zach, was it like 3 seasons in one to get through this first half? And somehow they emerged from it through all this disappointment and all this negativity and so much to be pissed off about. Because the Central Division is what it is, you head into the break in first place in this division, and it sort of feels like it's it's theirs to lose. I don't know if that's just because that's the mindset we take watching the Guardians every single day. I'm sure if you asked a Twins fan, even a Twins journalist, they might disagree. How did we emerge through the first half with this team still finding a way to reach 500 and being in first place? And if you're going to tell me it's all because of the Kansas City Royals, I might listen to that.
No, I mean, I haven't looked at this stat in a little bit, so don't quote me on it, but I think that they've been okay against winning teams. Early in the season, they kept tripping up against the doormats of the league. Like, they've struggled against the Tigers and the White Sox. So, to me, it's not even... I keep saying this. It's like, I don't care about the Central. I don't care about the division. I don't care what happened in April or May or even June at this point. It's looking forward, what is this team? And I think you feel better about just the way they've played for the last few weeks. It doesn't feel like anything they're doing is unsustainable. Now, the unsustainable part might be relying on rookie starting pitchers and whether Shane Bieber will be here. But if you look at their lineup, like, is anyone's slash line like crazy? Like, oh my God, there's no way this keeps up. No, not at all. I think a few guys, Ahmed Rosario has course corrected a little bit. Jose Ramirez course corrected a little bit. So I think that's sort of fueled them. I think you could still expect more from Andres Jimenez and Josh Bell. And so I think, I agree with you. I think this is Cleveland's division to lose. We also have, you can't just completely disregard what happened last year. I think that's part of why we feel that way. Because we've seen the Guardians do this and we haven't seen the Twins do it. So I don't know what's going to happen. But to me, if I'm the front office, I'm looking at this team and I'm not caring about the last three months. I'm looking ahead and saying, the division's there for the taking, that's fine. But what do we need to actually be a threat and to help ourselves next year and the year after, too?
Well, it's the case with this team. They always learn so much about themselves as the year unfolds, and they've learned how to better deploy some players. In some cases, maybe they haven't deployed them enough, but I look at a guy like Tyler Freeman, who has stepped in and just every opportunity they've given him off the bench, he continues to thrive in a way that I am surprised that a younger player could do this in a bench role without a ton of major league experience. But that's sort of the reputation for him, right? He just rolls out of the rack and can hit 280, 290. And we've seen that. And so maybe you get a better understanding of how he can be implemented. Do you hold against them the time when Mike Zunino was the catcher because he's not now? Now it's Bo Naylor. I don't know what he's going to be offensively for the rest of this year, and we certainly have seen him go through his struggles. But it certainly seems like the days where he has a multi-hit game, that there's a lot more of that on the way. I don't know how consistently it's going to get there, and boy, once you start building up games and getting towards the end of the season, how does he handle that major league workload on top of the mental workload of taking on a brand new pitching staff and taking on all that new on top of just never being here before? We don't know how he's going to react to all of that, but this is different than when Mike Zunino was catching every single day. So it's a different sort of team. Now, those are just two examples. You can look at that in the starting rotation, too. There was a portion of the very, very early season when you had Zach Plesac starting games and Cal Quantrill starting games. I don't know that maybe neither one of those guys starts a game for the rest of the year. I don't know. So this is a different team than certainly where they started. That makes it, I think, fun on some level because you think they've made some improvements across the board. This is also a little bit terrifying because, as I said, Bo Naylor, you have no major league track record to go on. The starting pitching, you're trying to manage their workload through the entirety of this season with guys that have never put in that inning total. There's a lot of I don't know here. And I guess that's not too different from where we started the year with a bunch of guys that we didn't know how they'd back up a first year of success.
Yeah, I think the thing is, we always talk about Terry Francona's teams play better in the second half, and there's a reason for that. It's not just you snap your fingers and it happens, so assume it's going to happen again, but a lot of times they try to work through every scenario, every roster opportunity they can to just do their due diligence and make sure they're not missing anything, or make sure, they don't cut someone in April who could have had success here if they would have just given them a chance. It's, there's an order of operations to this. And I think part of the confusion this season for all of us has been what that order of operations is, because it doesn't seem to align with the way that they think about things over the course of more than just one season. And we know Ahmed Rosario is probably not going to be here next year. And that you want to learn about these young guys and let them develop and not stall that. And they haven't quite done that. So I am curious to see if there are changes to that down the stretch. What more can Tyler Freeman do to prove that even if it's 3 days a week, he should be in the lineup, right? Let him prove that until he can't. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm really interested to see the trade deadline decisions, not just with the Guardians, but the Twins too. They're in a weird spot. Like they have some youth, but they're also, I never know what they're doing. It always feels like they're caught in the middle between being a young rebuilding team and being a team that wants to win a playoff game for once. So I don't know, but I'm curious to see if this becomes, if both teams upgrade, or if one team stands pat and one team kind of stays neutral by rearranging some deck chairs. I don't know.
Maybe the biggest question to ask is what happens to Cleveland's ace in the second half. Is he going to be here beyond the end of July? We don't know that yet, and I don't think the team really knows that yet either. And his performance has even clouded this more than maybe you could have anticipated to this point, because he just seems like a Jekyll and Hyde, if I've ever seen it, of two pitchers that those first 70, 75 pitches just kind of rolls along like you would expect an ace to do, and then you get to about that 70, 75 pitch mark, and he turns into a pumpkin. And it's been pretty confounding here, and it's not just like a 1 or 2 start thing. It's been like a steadily evolving thing with him, where you're looking at third time through the lineup or pitch number, whatever you want to look at, the numbers just get significantly worse. And this is not someone that I would typically think that about throughout most of his career, that you can only take him 2 times through the lineup. He's usually pretty good at making adjustments throughout the game and being smart enough to not only do that start to start, but also within a game. We used to see Corey Kluber do that so magnificently when he was at the peak of his powers, and I'd always marvel at his ability to do that a third time through the lineup. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm not sure if the team has. I would love to be able to sit down with their data and see, is there something in the stuff that just goes off a cliff at the 70, 75 pitch mark? Normally, maybe I would just chalk it up to just whatever. It's just a weird thing that happens throughout the course of a season. But how they've acted about his workload and when they've pulled him out of starts has me kind of sounding the conspiracy music just a little bit, like not full-fledged to the 11th power here, but I'm at least a little bit intrigued by it, because why did we see him get lifted out of it? What was it, 3-4 starts ago, when he's rolling through 6 innings? You just, he's coming back out for the 7th, and there's no Bieber. What's happening? And they're saying, we're looking to manage the workload here. And you're looking at the pitch count and you're thinking, wasn't this usually when he tumbles off the edge of the cliff? And now coming out of the break, they're giving him some extra days. And it's like, well, we've put a lot on him over the years. Okay, I just sort of buy that if it's just the one thing, but there's multiple things here that just have me scratching my head and wanting to know a little bit more. Is there something within the numbers that they see in his stuff that is just, it's not as crisp as it is as in that first 60, 65, 70 pitches, that they're wanting to get him out of these games early? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I haven't been able to decipher anything. But I do think that the way that they've handled this is, again, not full-fledged, oh my God, what are they doing? There has to be something wrong with him. But it's enough. Isn't it enough to get the antenna up a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've asked around. I've asked him and Tito and Carl Willis and others, and I don't know the answer either. I'm inclined to say it's well, it could be a couple of things. Number one, he's never had this problem in the past. If you look at his OPS the third time through the order, 2019 opponent's OPS 639, 2020 430, which is absurd. 2021 592, 2022 663. This year, and by the way, those are all well below or above league average. Well, far beyond better than league average. This year, opponents the third time through the order are slashing 315, 351, 589 against him. So that's a 939 OPS, which is 42% worse than league average. So he said, maybe and he's given up 8 home runs the third time through this year, by the way. So he has said, maybe I need to throw more fastballs and I think kind of use his command to his advantage and just keep guys off the other stuff better. That's fine. But it is weird, a couple things. One, first of all, your fastball's only 91, 92 anymore. We don't need to belabor the velocity point because he's proven in the past that he can get by with that. But he doesn't throw his curveball nearly as much anymore. We've theorized maybe why. Don't know the answer for sure. He hasn't inclined to reveal that. So he's become like a slider cutter guy. And the cutter, I haven't looked at the stats recently, but I know from earlier in the season and last year, that pitch gets hit. He honestly uses it more just to get guys off the fastball. Here's something that looks like the fastball but moves like the slider. The problem is if you're a cutter slider guy and they see cutter slider the first time and they see cutter slider the second time, what do you think they're going to be looking for the third time? If they are confident that you're not going to throw that curveball, or that if you are going to throw that curveball, it's just to bounce it in the dirt, and they're not scared of your fastball, you don't have as many ways to beat them as you used to. That's too simple of an approach for that to be exactly why this is what it is. But I do think there's something there, and I'm sure it's probably a combination of factors because, as you said, it's been very curious. That Arizona start, he was dealing, and they left him in there a fourth time to face Corbin Carroll and the rest of the middle of that order, and in the 8th inning, he kind of fell apart. And, Terry Francona said he is not shy about saying, I left this guy in too long, and those earned runs you gave up at the end, those are on me, things like that. But then they course corrected by, I'm using that phrase too much. They changed things the next week when you mentioned the Milwaukee start. He was at 80 pitches, and they have Tim Herron warming, even though he had given up 1 run. So it's very strange. He has not pitched as deep into games recently. And on top of that, he's not going to pitch until the 4th day out of the break. So he's going to end up getting 9 days, I think. And the way they organize this, I think Gavin Williams gets an extra day, maybe 2. I think 2. Tanner Bybee gets a few. You could have given those guys even more and just pitched Bieber on. Didn't even have to be regular rest. You could have given Bieber an extra day and have him pitch Saturday in Texas. It's weird because, they've leaned on him, but he also hasn't pitched deep into games, and he's been throwing 80, 85 pitches a start for the last few weeks. So it seems weird that he would need the rest. It's all really strange. I don't know. I'm usually not conspiracy guy. I usually don't buy into the fact that a team is holding back a player to preserve his trade value or showcasing someone, things like that. I usually don't really buy into that stuff. I will say that this is all weird. And Bieber kind of adds fuel to the fire when he's just seems like he's so carefully picking out his words to post-game answers and other interviews. So, I don't know.
Well, you said something is very simple, and it seems too simple to be the truth, but sometimes it could be the most simplest solution is the actual solution, and we have talked about him trying to find ways to be successful without the elite velocity, and to his credit, it seemed like he really had done that, but maybe he feels like he's only got a couple of ways to do that with the stuff being what it is, and so he doesn't differ enough that third time through the lineup. And so because he doesn't feel like he has that third or fourth way to carve up a lineup, like, here's the formula that I got to follow to be successful. And by the time guys are getting through the third time, they're more comfortable with it. I don't know. It could be too simple, but maybe that's at least a starting point. And whether or not he believes he has the stuff anymore to be able to attack the way that he did 2 or 3 years ago, maybe he still just has to be different enough to get guys off of the game plan the first 2 times through, because he's still very good the first 2 times through. I mean, when you're carrying a batting average against of 224 the first time through and 223 the second time through, like, things are going good. And then they jump up to 315 and guys are just crushing you and they got a 589 slug the third time through. How does that happen when you're very good the first time and the second time through? Maybe it is predictability. And maybe he doesn't have the confidence to go about the ways a different way, but he just needs to. He just needs to be different enough to get guys off of what he's doing. I mean, I was even looking to see, could it be just he's had rotten luck the third time through? Maybe some things will even out. And I guess if you want to say like a 326 batting average on balls in play compared to 240 the second time through, but it was 302 the first time through. Like, I don't see anything that's...
He's given up 8 of his 14 home runs the third time through. It's not
that's what I mean.
Ball luck. It's getting
rocket
pounded.
Shots. It's rocket shots, right? It's guys just squaring him up, and like, okay, what about he's not stranding as many guys, and so maybe he's stranding guys. When he's giving up the home runs, are going to strand somebody on second base when the ball's hit over the fence? No, I don't buy into any of that. So I don't have an answer. I don't think you have an answer. I'm not even sure the team or he has an answer, or else maybe they'd be working towards it right now. Other than, let's see if getting this guy some periodic rest when we can helps reinvigorate the arm. That's what leads me to believe there's something within the stuff numbers, because teams look at that. They can see the quality of the stuff as they get to certain pitch marks, and I think that's more important even than third time through the order. We think, oh, well, the guy's seeing him a third time, that's going to be the big deciding factor. Maybe, but I think it goes very much in tandem with just the pitch count and a guy getting labored as the start goes on. So maybe it's just a quality dip in the stuff that he's letting go the third time through. I don't know what it is, but I certainly know that if we see it and fans see it, the Guardians see it, Bieber sees it, all the other teams see it as well. And they're not going to be paying premium for a guy they can only use 2 times through the lineup in a playoff game. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's the troublesome part of this, is because it's so funny when I see, when he has a rough start and fans are like, oh, that's it. You got to trade him. It's like, well, yes, but everyone else is seeing what you're seeing, okay? So it's like the other teams' front offices have the MLB TV package. They can watch games out of their market as long as they're not blacked out. So it's tough. I mean, you're going to need to extract maximum value. You're going to need a team that is bold enough to believe that they see something that they think they can get more out of Bieber than this team with the vaunted pitching factory can. And that's tough. I don't know. I don't think you want to trade him to Tampa. You haven't had much luck dealing with them. They're the one team that I feel like thinks they can turn everyone into gold.
You got a pretty strong track record of being able to do it. Baltimore, like, just they're so eager to taste playoff success, and they do have a number of position player, minor league prospects. I think aren't a number of them in the infield. Like, that's the one thing Cleveland really needs, is to add more minor league infielders. But there could potentially be a match. I know other teams have been floated out there, but the biggest thing comes down to, can the team that's trading for Bieber trust that he's going to be the same guy deep into a playoff start? They have to be able to believe that. And it goes beyond surface level numbers. It goes beyond what a batting average is. All these teams, we're talking about stuff numbers, and that's looking at the quality of how it's moving in comparison to other pitches and the location. They have all this stuff too. It's not just a Guardians trade secret because, oh, well, he's playing in progressive field. No, teams, everybody has their own numbers, so no one's going to get fooled in that regard. If there's some sort of dip in the stuff, he's going to have to be able to prove that that was some sort of fluke. That was a couple of a few start stretch. I got that figured out. I'm less predictable now. Whatever it is. Otherwise, I know as myself, trading for him, I wouldn't do it. If I didn't believe I could trust him a third time through, or if I saw some warning signs screaming at me in my face that his stuff just doesn't hold up as long as it once did, I'd need to know more, and I certainly am not going to give you premium for that guy. And then if that's the case, I don't think the Guardians trade him. They're not going to – you think they're going to accept 50 cents on the dollar for trading their ace in the middle of a season when they're also in first place? I find that hard to believe.
Tell me if you agree with this then. If you're hanging on to Bieber, is it because you aren't going to get what you want, or is it because you feel like you need him to get to the finish line this year and he would be one of your playoff starters?
Both.
This podcast
if somebody
stinks.
was...
Everything is always in the middle. There's always nuance. I want hot takes, damn it.
I hate details. I don't want to look below the surface. I just want a clean answer. How would it be anything other than both?
Okay.
Because the second thing exists, the first, like, those two things are tied together. If they are in the middle of a season where they're not living up to their own expectations, and you can make the case that that's already the case, but because the division is what it is, you're in first place. And so what happened before today does not matter, because it's all about you and the Twins. You're starting right now, today. You look at that past stuff as evaluation, but you're starting today. How is the first thing not tied to that?
You're leading me to my next
if they were losing
point.
If they were losing, then you would take most likely a little bit less. It adds just a little bit of more of a convince me factor. Why do I need to give up Bieber? You need to convince me that I need. That's their negotiating chip here.
So then, if you end up keeping him, don't you have to add in a different way? I don't see a way this team can just stand pat, stay the course, just keep going the way they're going. I don't see a scenario for that. Am I crazy? If you're keeping Bieber, it is at least in large part because you are worried about getting to the finish line with Quantrill hurt, McKenzie hurt, Savali a big injury risk at all times, and 3 rookie starting pitchers who you're already coddling. So that plays a part in it. And you don't think that you can get the return that would both help your offense and not completely cripple your starting rotation. And if that's the case, then you got to add. Because we don't need to talk about, like, Bieber isn't some scrub. I mean, even with his struggles third time through, he's still a solid starting pitcher. And if you, especially in the playoffs, you can manipulate him and only let him face guys 2 times, and he can be pretty valuable there. So there are benefits to keeping him. It's not like you have to just take the best offer and pack his bags for him and not think twice. They may do that, but you don't have to do that. And if you end up keeping him, he can be a pretty useful guy. And if that's the case, you have to find some other way to add. I just don't see a scenario where standing pat makes sense.
Yeah, I hate just letting things exist as they are. This team does that a lot. For as the few times we can point to them actually going all in and making this big move, I think their more preferred outcome is always, we'll just let this play out a little bit more. We'll just trust that our evaluations and our projections were correct and everyone will get back to their levels. I hate that. I want to make a decision one way or the other. Because I think it benefits you in the long run, whether it benefits you for the rest of that season or it benefits you in the future. The one thing that just is so painful is just standing pat and letting things keep playing out. Be the aggressor for once. This team hates being the aggressor. They'll do it. Antonetti will do it. He'll get that little itch, I think, at times, and he'll start feeling it. But otherwise, they just want this stuff to play out. Just that's out of my hands. Let let the baseball gods do what they will with this. I agree with you. I think you need to add if you're not going to trade Bieber. And that's tough because you're going to take that Bieber conversation all the way up to the deadline, I'm sure.
Well, you'd rather have him face the Pirates than the Rangers, right? That should boost his value back up.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just for old time's sake. All right, well, let's table that for a little bit. We'll get back to that, I'm sure, in the coming episodes. Go join us at Patreon for more Shane Bieber trade discussion, because everybody loves that. This show is brought to you in part by SeatGeek. You get $20 off your first ticket purchase over at SeatGeek by using the code SELBY, SELBY. Save yourself some money. I don't think you'll be buying tickets to see any of these draft picks anytime soon, but Cleveland did make some, although when they draft a reliever anywhere on the first day, like I got Nick Sandlin vibes where we were talking about, could this guy come up immediately and help this team? I thought that with Walters, the guy they took, their third selection. Immediately I'm thinking, college guy that is a reliever. You're already determined this guy's a reliever, so there's no, well, we want to get him stretched out or we want to see what he could do. No, they are clearly targeting him as a reliever. Am I wrong for thinking, where does this guy fit in the bullpen very, very soon?
No. I mean, the one thing, they haven't had a lot of bullpen depth in the upper levels in recent years. So this can help with that. I don't know anything about these kids. This is not the podcast for college baseball talk, but that's one thing that always, I think, raises your antenna is, Sandlin, it seemed like he was going to come up 5 minutes after he was drafted, and then some things got in the way. But you've seen relievers make it up like the year they were selected. I don't know that that's going to happen with this kid, but you start thinking about next year and the makeup of the bullpen and where he fits, right?
Yeah, I think so. That clearly jumped out at me. Now, the kid they took with their first overall pick, why is it inevitable? Power-hitting left-handed catcher. Not sure if he'll stick at that position. Immediately, everyone just assumes, Kyle Schwarber. The Guardians just took Kyle Schwarber. I can't wait for him to show up in the World Series in a couple of years and just torment whichever team that is, for Joe Buck to join the commentary team just for that series so he can gush all over Ralphie Velasquez. But hey, Ralphie Velasquez, power bat. That's kind of new. It's not just a contact guy. We're targeting some power in the draft. Okay, I can get with this.
Wait, so did he used to be a college pitcher who thrives off command and has like a solid, unspectacular fastball? Or has he always just been a high school power hitting catcher?
You must have got him confused with another Ralphie Velasquez.
No Miles Naylor.
No Miles Naylor. And already love that they're making jokes about the Guardians not targeting him. Okay, so I did have a thought about targeting a power bat. We know that they have targeted the contact guys for years and years and years. They were doing that when other teams were focused on power. Part of me thinks, are the teams starting to focus more on the contact, and now the Guardians are switching gears here and they want to target power? Do they want to go in cycles here and consider different things? But we know that they have really focused on the contact guys. I think they've really studied how contact guys are what they are, and how do they take that skill and maybe teach that to guys that don't have a great contact ability. Whether or not they're successful, I don't know. But I'm wondering, through all of the several years of taking those contact bats and trying to work with them, do they think they have a better handle on that to be able to teach that, because they've worked with so many contact hitters that maybe they have a better idea of what makes them tick? And so now they feel like we can target a guy that has more power because we think, even if he's not a great contact guy, and I'm not saying that about Velasquez, I'm just saying in particular, a power guy, do they have a better understanding and maybe a thought internally that we can make them a little bit better in the contact side because we've spent so many years really studying what makes those contact hitters contact hitters?
It's a great thought. I have no idea.
I'm giving them too much credit, aren't I?
I think we can say with some confidence, like, they've prioritized contact in recent years, right? But you still can't get them to admit that, right? That's the thing, is their default setting on anything like that is, it's not one size fits all. And they'll point to examples of guys that they targeted who didn't fit that profile. Now you can see through the BS, and you can just look at enough people, and then, they'll tell you in that, yes, like they clearly have. You can't just deny the shift in strategy. But I don't know that one player or two players or one draft will flip that on its head. So the thing that makes this so difficult, and I mean, it's tough because it's like, I wrote a big takeout on the pitching factory. I think it's 3.5 years now. And I've kicked around pursuing a story on that same angle again because I feel like there's just so much new information, and they've even learned more in that domain since that time. And you see a new wave of starting pitchers come up, and it's like, oh man, like I would love to hear the process with Bybee and Williams and Allen, and what's changed since Plesac and Bieber and Savali, and since Kluber and Clevenger. And the problem is, while I think that would be interesting, I think like you almost have to do something on the hitting side, and why it has been so difficult to mirror that. And I wrote, I think it's been maybe, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, where I did a big takeout on the hitting side and sort of their struggles and like their hope moving forward. And a lot of it was based on contact and, kind of like the safer bets. But the problem is this stuff takes so long to learn whether what you're doing is working, because you don't know exactly if it's the player's fault. Did they not put in the work? Did they just not have the skill set to do what they need to do? Is it the scouting? Is it the development? Is it the coaching? Where did the failure stem from? So it takes so long to learn from it that I don't know. Like if the shift in approach to the contact stuff is a failure, like, do we know yet? Do we know for sure? Is it going to take more time? Do they feel like they've already learned from it, and this is the start of that, a new shift? What are they shifting toward? Like it's really difficult, and like I think it's just always fluid, and I think even in their minds, it's probably like they're constantly searching for answers because they're just, this is not black and white, and I think it takes a long time to sort of understand what went wrong. Like we talk about specific hitters and their profiles and whatnot, but they're thinking more about their internal processes and how to identify where they screwed up, where they succeeded. At what point in the timeline did something happen that allowed Tanner Bybee to start throwing 99 and throwing with conviction and developing a better slider and all that? Like it's not just one thing. And the success stories and the failure stories, I think, are equally critical in helping shape your organizational philosophies, but those take so long to learn from.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm giving them some sort of credit here, like they've clearly figured something out. I don't. These are just questions that I ask myself.
It's a fascinating
because
topic.
Clearly, I really think they have gotten to the bottom of what they believe makes a contact hitter tick, and they think that it's a skill that can be taught to some degree. And so maybe that opens up the door for them to stop taking all of the contact bats and implement that strategy within other hitters. I think that's what they've tried to teach with Gabriel Arias, and I think they're still teaching that at the major league level. And on some level, you can look at some guys that have gotten better at being a little bit more selective, like the walk numbers have gone up and the strikeout numbers have dipped a little bit. I don't know if at the end of the day that will be a successful implementation of what they believe they've learned, but it is something that I think we'll continue to monitor. And it's never over. It's always an evolving thing. But I've got one mind-melting pretzel for you to twist yourself into. Do you consider Will Benson a victory for the player development team?
That's a good question. I don't know. He was such a weird
Or is
case.
it's all Joey Votto? It's the Joey Votto conversation he had. That was it.
But at every single level, he would struggle initially, like in the first year he was there. Because if he would get promoted mid-season, he'd struggle at the new level in the second half, and then he'd come out blazing in the first half at that same level, and then he'd get the promotion. So I feel like the same things happen in the major leagues. So do you give that credit to player development? Do you give that credit to him for learning from his mistakes? Do you give that credit to the coaching?
Do you know what this show is? Do you know what we do? We give the credit to everybody. It's always a collective thing. It's never about one thing or the other, right?
It's not about you or me. It's about the Godcast community.
That it is. And them coming together to make fun of us when we say stupid things, like having hot takes to begin the year. Do you remember what your hot takes were?
No, and
remember
I'm terrified.
What you predicted? I had forgotten maybe some of the things that we said. Because there's a lot of times we make offhand comments like, everyone rips into me. That's fair. I'll take it. When I said, like, oh, there could be a scenario here where maybe Mike Zunino is actually pretty good. And because maybe the catcher position isn't that hot this year, he finds his way into the All-Star game. Wasn't that crazy? He just did it a couple of years ago with Tampa Bay. Well, let me point out, it was not part of my hot takes. I did not say that Zunino was going to be an All-Star. Zunino was in the hot takes, and it came from you. Do you remember what your hot take was in relation to Mike Zunino?
I don't. I've blocked everything related to him out of my mind.
Well, one of your hot takes was Bo Naylor catches more games than Mike Zunino.
Ooh. Nailed it. Maybe.
Not yet. He keeps playing at the rate that he has been. Initially, I'm like, you can't play Naylor every day. Give him a break like 3 times a week. Then I see Cam Gallagher just not hitting anything, and that trend continues. And him actually showing he can take on the workload. So just keep playing him.
Does Cam Gallagher keep his job if Bieber gets traded?
Does Gallagher go with Bieber?
David Fry can throw some runners out. He had a bullet Sunday.
Can. I'm not saying this has to be the case for every lefty, because Bo Naylor, just like his brother, should face some lefties. So it's not just a self-fulfilling prophecy here. Well, he can't hit lefties because you never let him develop against them. But wouldn't you seek out those tough lefties and get David Fry in there to catch against them?
Seems like Naylor Fry is pretty much all you need right now.
Natural. Yeah, it's like a natural thing. Okay, well, you feel good about that one. My prediction that Daniel Espino starts a playoff game, not going to come to fruition. Injuries hurting me a lot in my predictions. How about this one? Josh Bell will be a Guardian for 1 year only, said Zach.
Ooh, well, I mean, maybe he just feels so bad that he declines it. I don't know. You see signs of it, right? He had that game over the weekend. Was it Friday? Reached base 5 times.
Yeah.
For as awkward as the swing looks sometimes, when he does get a hold of one, and it always seems to be a fastball at his chin.
Yeah.
And he just tomahawks it into like Lake Erie. Does look nice. I think he'll be here next year.
That was my prediction. Josh Bell will be just good enough that it's not a bad season, but he will be back. That was my prediction. I think that still looks like it's on course. This is looking at the most recent case where we saw a hitter just tumble off of a cliff was Franmil Reyes. fair enough. I think we'll always in our minds link the two most close case of two guys looking like they just lost whatever they used to have. I don't see that with Bell. Franmil, remember some of those at-bats where it was like 3 pitches back to the dugout. He looked like he wasn't even picking up what pitch it was. And there are times where Josh Bell clearly looks in between. But looking at his Savant page, to me, that still looks like a guy I'm going to continue to play because it's just enticing enough that I don't think it's crazy that he goes on one of those blistering stretches like he had in the first half last year. And this is always the sort of hitter he is. I think if you ask every fan base that watched Josh Bell for a full season will tell you he is a guy that it frustrates the absolute hell out of you, but then goes on a stretch where you can't wait for that guy to get up to the plate. Hopefully that this little sore leg that he's got, he takes a foul ball right off the upper part of the thigh. Looks like it hurt. Looked like it hurt the big guy. But still comes up and has a 2-run hit, and running down to first base like, no, this is not going to be a double. But you're seeing signs, and I'm going to continue to play that guy because I'm seeing it's like it's not great, but isn't it just like enticing enough that I'll just stick with it. I'll grit my teeth, but I think it's in there still.
You have to, because he's one of the few guys in this lineup who can, if Ahmed Rosario gets hot, okay, but they're all singles. And this is not to slam the guy. I told you, I've retired from the Ahmed Wars. I don't care anymore. But there's a difference between when he gets hot and when Josh Bell gets scorching hot, and it's home runs, and it's doubles, and it's from both sides of the plate. So it's against lefties and righties. Like that can elevate your lineup. That can lengthen it out. That gives you middle of the order thump, something they need so badly. So yeah, you have to. The disappointing part for this team is that he's your DH. So you're running out this DH every day. That limits your flexibility and makes it so you can't get guys like Tyler Freeman in the lineup, who's hitting .308 despite only playing on Sundays.
It's amazing. But Freeman, like Rosario, his scorching hot still only helps you to some level. Ahmed Rosario, how often are you ever going to see a team, even if he's facing a lefty, it's very rare that you're going to see him just be walked. Unless it's like extra innings, it just makes sense to put him on first base. But even then you wouldn't do it because who's hitting right behind him? You're not going to put 2 guys on right in a row. When Josh Bell gets hot, other teams, that's a guy that people put up on the whiteboard and say, this series, we're not letting Josh Bell go off. We're not letting him beat us. He has an ability to change the game with one swing. And we saw just here recently, we complained about in that Atlanta series, and wouldn't you know, they just go crazy. Absolutely bananas with power the next few days after we complain about it. But doesn't that show you how good this offense can be? You don't have to be the Braves. You don't have to hit 4 home runs in a game. But how much different does this team look if they hit 1 or 2? It's like they don't need 7 power bats, but God, add 1 to this mix, and it completely changes the way you look at this team.
Yeah. You got 3 weeks. You have to add. Doesn't matter how you do it. Oscar Gonzalez cannot be your big trade deadline addition.
Hey, maybe he can help out against lefties.
Sure.
I think having somebody to pair with Brennan might be a good choice right now. But you're right. That's not anybody's answer. And the scary thing, if they brought Gonzalez up, you know what that would do? That would just cut more into Brennan's playing time as opposed to like moving straw off of his.
Mm-hmm.
Can already see the way that would go. One of the prospect pitchers becomes a regular, said Zach. You were wrong. 3 of them did.
Whoops. Should have said 3. I mean, it's crazy to think if Espino was healthy, how this would have all played out differently. Maybe Gavin Williams would still be a AAA, although that just seems so pointless. I think they would certainly trade Bieber. McKenzie injured. Maybe they wouldn't have brought Cal Quantrill back as soon. I don't know. It would be very interesting. And then, trying to juggle 4 pitchers who need their innings managed.
Right, but couldn't that actually make it easier?
Yeah.
Because maybe you would have massaged it so you're counting on 3 at any one given time, and then the 1 is taking the breather. Could Logan Allen be back for that start coming out of the break, the fifth guy?
I would be very surprised if it was not him.
Seems like it lines up for that. Hey, credit for me for one thing. I said if they don't make that trade prior to, because we recorded this right after the first of the year, if they don't make that trade before spring training and into the season, I said there's a good chance we see 3 of the prospects up. Now, I said Espino, probably not Logan Allen, but whatever. I'll take some credit because I also said stupid stuff like George Valero will be a regular by August.
In UFC or in the majors?
I'm going to give some credit to people that wrote the headlines correctly. He did not go after the umpire. It's a very important distinction to be made here. He deserved the suspension for fighting other players, not the umpire. Facts are facts here. The umpire was just in the way. Get out of the way. It's just like, Earl Hebner taking a super kick to the face. Didn't mean to kick Earl, but he was just in the way, and now he's down, so they got to bring another umpire in who runs down the ramp like the guy from SmackDown in the meme. No, okay, they're not going to do that, and I don't condone any sort of violence.
Yeah, you hope this isn't a lost season for him, but it's getting dicey. He needs to start hitting and doing so consistently, and I mean the opportunity is there. They need him to take it.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Tristan McKenzie's not going to finish in the top 5 Cy Young voting. Just injuries killing these hot takes for me. Do you feel good about this one? The number 2 starting pitcher for the Guardians will be Aaron Savali.
No, because he might be the number 1. Boy, my predictions are pretty good.
No victory lap on Savali? You're not going to tell everyone how right you were about that?
I mean, I go down the list here. This is one victory lap after another. I should just kick back and...
Are you tired? How many times can you run around the track? Okay, here's your final one. Jose wins MVP.
Stupid Ohtani.
Now, what if he gets dealt to the National League?
That's a good question. He has to win MVP wherever he goes, right? Like if he goes to the National League, is he just NL MVP? But Acuna's been unbelievable.
Yeah,
he gets screwed just because Ohtani just because the Angels are so inept year after year that they deal him.
And that opens up the door for Jose for MVP.
I actually started writing a piece because I was looking at just the non-Ohtani competition in the American League. And how I'm so tired of he's the most under the radar superstar, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, okay? You're going to make him overrated if you keep saying that. But he is just quietly, I think the thing that stands out most about this year, because he's quietly, I mean, his numbers are almost identical to what they were last season. Like the slash line is almost the same. And his OPS is 870 and last year it was 869. But it's the well-roundedness. It's like he could win a Gold Glove this year, and the base running is always elite, and it's really impressive how he still seems to care about that stuff. So it's, I mean, if he has a good second half, he could finish second or third again, and it's just, I don't know if he's ever going to get that 1 year where he wins MVP. It would help if Ohtani goes to the National League at some point, but he could be a finalist once again. Pretty crazy.
But if you think about it, not really crazy at all. All right, my final one. Josh Naylor wins a Gold Glove at first base. Just erase one day from your mind, and he's having a really great season at first base defensively. One day will stick in everybody's brain. But really, the numbers say he's having a good year defensively.
Yeah. And if Rafael Palmeiro can win a Gold Glove there, why can't Josh Naylor?
32 games?
Something like that.
This is before they put the Palmeiro rule in place.
I'll never forget.
Is it up there and outs above average?
I'll never forget. I think it was Should I name names? Who cares? I think it was Greg Zahn, former catcher analyst. I think lived around here for a little bit. Was on a local radio station a couple years ago, and was just bitching about the media. They don't know how to vote for awards or this or that. It's such BS. They're terrible. They once voted Rafael Palmeiro Gold Glove Award winner. Bro, media has nothing to do with that. Okay? That's you guys. That's your coaches. All right? Don't talk to us. So, yeah, that one was egregious, but I guess anyone can win a Gold Glove, so why not Josh Naylor?
I want to spend more time on this, looking at why he would have 5 outs above average at first base this year, but be -1 defensive runs saved. I've always said those Fangraph stats are terrible. I'm only caring about outs above average now. Whatever helps me paint the best picture that I possibly can. Forget about that other garbage. Don't trust it. You know who we often talk about an ability to revive a fandom within yourself and how kids can do that for you? Went to the game on Thursday and had the family there. And my youngest one, not too much into it. She's still wanting to go over to the kids' playhouse, and so does my older one, who's now 7. But he was taking a little bit of interest in mostly the home runs and the fireworks, right? The home runs and the fireworks for any kid, whether you're 7 or whether you're 38. Whatever the case may be, you're going to be into the fireworks. And so, wouldn't you know it, like I told him going in, hey, man, they do the siren and the fireworks for the home runs, but this team doesn't hit too many of them. They go nuts, right, in that game. It was so great. And so we're sitting out in the right field mezzanine level, the old Pronkville. And so a couple of the home runs, Jimenez's ball comes our way, and Naylor's ball comes our way. And so in both cases, I get the opportunity to go crazy because I want my son to, see that this is a fun thing. So I'm like into it. And just in that moment, it was really cool to put all the other stuff aside and just be like, home run, dude, slap hands. We're all having a good time. And so that just sort of helped revive some of that fandom. Otherwise, you're sitting there, I'm sitting there watching the game. I'm not going to go crazy. Somebody hits a home run. Like, I'm happy for the show. I'm happy for the people in the Discord. It's all good, like good positive vibes. But in that moment, I get to be part of that again. And just bring a part of my inner youth back to the surface to help my son embrace something that's really cool, seeing a home run in a major league game, which we in our ways where we've seen home runs at major league games, whatever, it's no big deal. But as a fan, you want to go there, you want to see a home run, you want to see it hit your way, you want to see the guy around the bases and hear the siren. It's all part of the spectacle, and it was so much fun to be able to take part in that with my son.
I can't compare to that yet. Our household is just my 13-month-old taking the lid to a mixing bowl and pushing it on his face. He now knows the term pig face, and then he goes to his parents and pushes the lid against their face to make it on them. So we share in that. You guys share in home runs and fireworks.
Kids don't just create these things themselves. They learn this stuff by watching others. So I'm now questioning what's happening at your house.
Because I just took a bunch of victory laps on my amazing predictions, let me give you a chance to sort of take one yourself. Today's Immaculate Grid, spoiler alert, warning. There's a Cleveland row. You have to pick a Cleveland Cub and a Cleveland Twin. I thought I had 2 good picks. I went Marlon Byrd, Cubs and 2016 Indians. And I went Carl Pavano, who was Twins in, I think, 2009 Indians, maybe? Does that sound right? I thought those were good. They were both 1%. You knocked it out of the park. So why don't you take us out of here with your 2 amazing picks?
Well, those were the only amazing picks for today. So I will just choose to focus on them. The Cleveland Twins angle was Jason Kubel. And the Cubs Indians connection was Sandy Martinez, former random Cleveland player of the day, Sandy Martinez. And probably that is what stuck in my brain as I thought, Cubs, Guardians, well, Cubs, Indians, Sandy Martinez. Of course, that was like 0.02% at the time. So, yeah, as you would expect.
Sandy Martinez, whose son, Angel, is on the Guardians 40-man roster.
That's right.
Jason Kubel, I believe, former number 1 ranked random jersey sighting from a few years back.
Ooh. It didn't go so well.
They need
This show did. I thought this show went well.
They need a better trade deadline acquisition than Jason Kubel.
I hope so. We'll see. For Zach, I'm TJ. We'll see you later this week over at Patreon. Patreon.com/SelbiusGodcast. Until then, enjoy the break, everybody.